Greetings, everyone. How you doing? Hey, I just did a recording on this, and I just blew right through 15 minutes of recording time, which was not my intention. So I'm going to try to truncate my presentation here because it was just too much. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. What I did was I created a little review slide presentation for you, and it's obviously on Blackboard here. This is the exam itself. I have 45 of the, let me just change this right now. I have 45 of the update of the 50 questions completed at this point, and I'm waiting to do the last 5 to see how things go in class today. But some of these will be like old friends, right? You recognize some of these questions. As we get a little further in here, you got different types of joints, different lines, muscles, different types of muscle. Getting all these answers. Muscle spindles, GTOs. Further down, we talk about submaximal, maximal thresholds for motor unit recruitment. So you're going to have a bunch of good stuff in here from the nerves, et cetera, all the way through to just picking out muscles. What I'm going to do now is just kind of go through topically on this PowerPoint presentation, just like the planes of movement. You're going to see some of those questions. Also, the axes that are associated with those planes will be involved as well. Reference lines, you'll have a couple of those questions layered in there. Also know orientation, right? Know your fitness antonyms. Know your superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, proximal, distal, etc. Some of that will be on the quiz exam. Hello. I do reflect a little bit on stabilizers, but the biggie that I do kind of point out is one that we spent some time on in class is how you might have an anterior-based exercise like a bicep curl, but the muscles themselves attach, or more accurately originate, on a posterior bony surface, like in this case the scapula, which is what type of bone? Yes, that's correct. It's a flat bone. And a little bit about synergist muscles. I do have a couple questions on the helping and a true synergist. Just remember, a true synergist is that it specifically helps to prevent an undesired joint action, whereas a helping synergist actually helps in the action itself. So in this case here, if you want to do a dumbbell side raise where you're bringing the arm up and away and doing a frontal plane movement, shoulder abduction, hook, down, up, down, to get here, anterior delt and on the backside posterior delt, they work together to help to a certain degree, but more importantly, the anterior and posterior delts are antagonistic to each other. One wants to bring the shoulder down into shoulder extension. The other wants to go in sagittal plane and do shoulder flexion. So they work against each other while helping this movement. So the difference you have is when you look at these, if I can scroll back here, the helping synergist helps the movement, and there's also an antagonistic component to it. The true synergist does nothing other than trying to help in the movement pattern by preventing the undesired joint action. So just keep that in mind. Think shoulder, shoulder, shoulder over here for this one, okay? That should help you out. We talked a little bit about this, where you have synergists. I made the point to say, as a practitioner, I've gotten to the point where I look at synergists and stabilizers in other parts of the body while I might be working in a primary area. So here I want to work rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis has to work, muscles in the pelvic floor and across the hip have to work to help keep this person flat, but these muscles, specifically sternocleidomastoid, have to work to help hold the head up with every single rep. So you might have some secondary stabilizers that come into play that you wouldn't have thought of. And believe me, you'll have this question when somebody says to you, I'm not feeling it here, I'm really feeling it in my neck, or I'm not feeling it in this part of my body, where should I be feeling this? It's because you have these secondary stabilizers that have to work for this unintended movement. It's almost like an unintended consequence of the movement. And then transverse, talked about that for stabilizing and flattening out the back. I thought this was really cool. I'm just going to put it in here, and I think I have one question regarding force coupling. But force coupling allows different muscles to work together to assist in a movement pattern and actually work more effectively. I like this in terms of how these three different muscles, if you will, two different regions of one muscle and the third muscle, all work together to help rotate the scapula. And I like this example a lot. So as I scroll down through this, I want to kind of make sure I get down to this area. This will be something you'll see more and more and more of as we get deeper into the class. You'll maybe have one question on this. Lines of pull, got it. And I use this as an example for lines of pull because line of pull versus line of resistance. Gravity wants to pull the bar straight down in this example. This example, the weight stack is redirected and the line of pull is slightly behind the person. So notice how here we had to take the arms out of straight up and down and tilt them back slightly to get the triceps to pre-contract, where here they were already pre-contract because of the line of resistance. And so that line of pull, let's do some, that line of pull in the muscle goes from the elbow, from the shoulder, tricep up over the elbow. Oh, Simon's sad. There we go. Over the elbow into the wrist, but the line of resistance is back here, slightly behind. So you know this is pre-contracted. We felt that in class when we palpated that on one of the students. Neural control. I always like the process of going through the neurological system. In this, there is a question regarding degrees and different levels within the central nervous system. Be aware of the cerebral cortex all the way down through the spinal cord and what the functions of each are. Afferent, efferent, that was the hand on the stove example. Put my hand on the stove, a signal goes up through the central nervous system, A before E. Says, hey, dummy, take your hand off the stove. Zap, it fires the muscles fire because of a signal sent down the efferent side of a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system to contract the muscles in my hand and my shoulder to go pull the hand away from the hot stove. Neural control, different levels of function, different nerve roots come out of the spine and innervate different areas of the body. So in general, like my one client who had a bag fall on his shoulder, it damaged the brachial plexus up here and it caused him to have dysfunction down the arm, but he was still fully capable of walking because nothing was damaged down here. Now, paraplegic versus quadriplegic, right? Paraplegic, an injury here, quadriplegic, injury up here. So it depends on where you injure or damage the tree and how it affects everything else downstream. My one client, nothing in the neck, over in the plexus, so everything beyond that was damaged and it was affected. If he had the bag fall on his neck, he would have had issues all the way down the rest of his central nervous system. Let's go through here. We talk about this. There are different levels for each, right? Be familiar with those. Here's another review of these so you can have an idea of what fires what. You'll have a couple questions on that, not too in-depth. Myotome, I do have an example where I'm asking you to come up with myotome for muscle and have a different understanding of the different parts of the cell body. So you have the axons and the dendrites. The axons, I always viewed it like axons and dendrites. The one that transmits down to and the other transmits up and away. And so if you look at an actual motor unit and actually look at it, this picture does a pretty good job. But what I did was I cut and pasted and put it in here so it's bigger. And you look at the myotome versus dermatome, and you have the efferent versus afferent side. One is a motor neuron, one's a sensory neuron, really. And those are the two that you're really going to focus on in here. And I thought this is a really good representation instead of trying to fumble through this other stuff. But this has its place. I don't have anything regarding interneurons on the exam. So realize with that afferent, efferent, one is a sensory, one is a motor, and you're going to need to connect those on the exam. Types of muscle, right? So you have the fiber arrangement, and in the fiber arrangement, you had three of them. One was one was two, one was many. This is a deltoid, gives you a good example of a multi. Then you have a bi, so you have one tendinous, kind of one tendon, if you will, and then you have muscle and muscle. This is unipinnate, you have one tendon and just one muscle belly. Different types of muscles, you'll recognize this from before. There are stages to contraction, and that is irritability, contractility, extensibility, elasticity. You'll need to put those in order, 1, 2, 3, 4. Intrinsic muscles, you remember this? Is flexor digitorum profundus intrinsic to the hand? No, it is not. Flexor digitorum profundus is not intrinsic to the hand, though it moves the hand. It's actually, it crosses the wrist, so it ends up being extrinsic. And for a review, that's all I'm going to have for you today. We'll have a little bit more in class, and that's it, my friends. Good luck on the exam.